Welcome to this explainer. When most of us hear the word economics, we instantly picture chaotic stock markets, massive corporations, or just a sea of confusing numbers. But today, we're unpacking the actual building blocks of economics, and it turns out it's way more than that. It's literally the invisible operating system running our daily lives. From the second you wake up to the long-term planning of entire nations, this system is constantly at work in the background, dictating what we buy, how we live, and how our entire society is structured.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to look at the reality of scarcity, choice, and opportunity cost, the three central economic problems, types of economic systems, and finally, the ultimate goal of welfare. Let's jump right in.
All right, part one, the reality of scarcity. Now, I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine you've got exactly 1,000 rupees in your pocket right now, and you desperately want a fresh pair of sneakers, a road trip with your friends, and all your absolute favorite books. Obviously, you can't buy them all at once.
Which kind of brings up this crazy thought experiment. What if money and time were just unlimited? What if everything in the world existed in an infinite supply? Well, honestly, if that were true, the entire field of economics wouldn't even exist. I mean, think about it. No budgeting stress, no rich or poor, no tough job markets. But as we all know too well, that is definitely not the reality we live in.
And that brings us to scarcity, which is the absolute bedrock of economics. It's the harsh reality that our wants are basically infinite, but the resources we have to actually fulfill them, things like money, land, and materials, they are strictly capped. And this isn't just a personal thing. It scales all the way up. A family figuring out their monthly budget at the kitchen table faces scarcity, sure, but so does a massive, wealthy nation sitting on oceans of oil if they don't have enough clean drinking water or tech infrastructure.
And hey, it's not always about money, right? Time is actually our most brutally scarce resource. Take the number 24, a wildly successful CEO, and someone spending, say, 6 hours a day just endlessly scrolling on their phone. They both get exactly 24 hours in a day. The massive difference in where they end up doesn't come from having more time. It comes entirely from how they choose to spend that scarce resource.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, Choice and Opportunity Cost.
Because our resources are so limited, we are constantly forced to make trade-offs. If you decide to sleep in, well, you're sacrificing study time. Or think of a farmer. If they use their limited plot of land to grow wheat, they are literally giving up the space they could have used for sugarcane. Every single choice we make carries a hidden sacrifice.
In the economics world, this hidden price tag is called opportunity cost. Simply put, it's the exact value of the next best alternative that you gave up to make your choice. So remember those expensive shoes we talked about earlier? If you spend your savings on them, your true opportunity cost isn't just the cash you handed over. It's the brand new headphones you had to leave sitting on the store shelf. We are literally always trading one thing for another.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the three central economic problems.
Now, zooming out to a national level, because a country's land, labor, and capital are all incredibly limited, every single nation on Earth, rich or poor, doesn't matter, has to answer three core survival questions: what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to produce it. Let's unpack these.
The first massive hurdle is what to produce. Since it's impossible to make absolutely everything, countries have to prioritize. And wow, did we see a shocking real-world example of this during the COVID-19 pandemic. Almost overnight, the entire global economy had to pivot. Because resources were stretched so dangerously thin, countries urgently pushed all their chips toward essential stuff: masks, life-saving medicines, oxygen cylinders, and basically just hit pause on luxury items.
Then we have the second problem, how to produce. And I gotta say, I never really thought of it this way, but it is a massive societal trade-off. Developed places like Japan or Germany, they lean heavily into advanced robotics because human labor there is incredibly expensive. But if you look at developing nations with huge populations, hiring 1,000 human workers instead of buying one giant robot is usually the smarter move. It boosts the local economy and keeps people employed.
So how do countries actually manage all this? That brings us to Section 4, types of economic systems.
Different societies tackle these huge problems in totally different ways. Take a market economy, like the USA. Here, everyday consumers and companies drive the decisions, mostly aiming for profit. That is fantastic for driving rapid innovation, but it definitely risks leaving vulnerable people behind. On the flip side, you've got a centrally planned economy. Think North Korea. There, the government calls all the shots, usually aiming for equality, but that almost always comes at the heavy cost of efficiency and basic personal choices.
And then you have the mixed economy, which basically tries to thread the needle between those two extremes. India is actually a fascinating example of this in action. You've got private companies out there fiercely innovating and competing, but the government keeps a firm grip on the vital lifelines, things like the railways and defense. It is this constant, tricky balancing act between chasing profit and protecting public welfare.
Which leads us to our final stop, Section 5, the goal of welfare.
All of this really brings us to a pretty profound realization. Economy is not just about profit. It's the invisible operating system of human lives. The whole point of all these economic building blocks we've been talking about isn't just to watch numbers go up on a stock ticker. It's to make sure people can actually live with dignity. I mean, if a society has mind-blowing tech and endless wealth, but millions of its people are struggling just to get basic food, healthcare, or an education, can we really call that society developed?
When you actually look at welfare in practice, you see governments actively trying to bridge those gaps. Take India's midday meal scheme. It is not just about handing out free food. It's a brilliant economic lever that physically motivates kids from poor backgrounds to show up to school. Or look at programs like PM Kisan for farmers or Ayushman Bharat for health insurance. These are absolutely not just expenses on a government spreadsheet. They are crucial investments because healthy, educated, and secure citizens, that is the true engine that drives long-term economic growth.
But, and this is a big but, pulling this off is an incredibly delicate balancing act. Scandinavian countries like Sweden and Norway are famous for their amazing healthcare and education, right? But they pay for it through extremely high taxes. For mixed economies, it's a constant struggle to juggle that private sector growth with strong social security. You have to make sure welfare schemes don't just bankrupt the system or get lost to corruption, while at the exact same time you have to prevent the kind of massive social unrest that bubbles up when inequality gets too extreme.
So, we've seen how the harsh reality of scarcity forces us into making tough choices, how every single choice has a hidden cost, and how these invisible economic systems literally shape the destinies of millions of people. But as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to chew on. Is a society's true identity defined simply by its massive wealth, its towering skyscrapers, and its booming industries? Or is it really defined by its welfare and how safe, educated, and healthy its everyday citizens actually feel? Thanks so much for exploring the building blocks of economics with us today. Keep questioning the choices around you, and I'll catch you next time.